The RD-704 is one of the newest guns to come to Escape from Tarkov in the 12.12.3 wipe, but is it worth using? Is it going to be one of the new meta guns, or is it going to be another cool gun that nobody uses in favor of more meta guns like the Mutant or the 308 MDR? Well, let's find out. So the TLDR here is that, yes, in my opinion, the RD-704 is definitely going to be in the meta. It is as good, if not better, than the Mutant. We'll talk about the intricacies of that later, but it's a really good gun. It's a really cool gun. I think the coolness will get overshadowed by people frustrated that we needed another 7.62x39 really good laser beamy gun. But hey, I'm not making those decisions. We're just here to talk about the RD-704. So you can purchase this gun from Mechanic at level 3 for about 114,000 rubles. It's not necessarily cheap, but it's also not necessarily crazy expensive compared to some of the other guns. Another thing I almost forgot when it comes to price of the gun is that you can actually purchase these on the flea market. You cannot purchase Mutants on the flea market. You can purchase these. I fully expect them to take this away because this is kind of broken. Once again, the Mechanic price for these is 114,000 rubles. You can get them cheaper, but the thing is you have to be careful about the durability. However, because people are selling the kind of broken ones for around 75,000 rubles, just today when researching this video, if you sit here and refresh long enough, I've purchased 3 or 4 100 out of 100 RD-704s for 75,000 rubles. People find them in barrel stashes or something like that. They check, they see 75,000 rubles, boom, right there. I can buy another one for 75,000 rubles. I just bought this gun. So that is another huge plus for the RD-704. You can get that for half off on the flea market sometimes. That means the budget builds are more effective. It means the meta builds are even cheaper. It's kind of nuts. What's really cool about this is that it's basically good to go. It's not very modular, but you don't really need it to be because the parts that come on this are really good. It comes with an adapter and a buffer tube on it, so you can put the M4 buttstocks if you want. The pistol grip is almost best in slot as is, and it already comes with a ton of ergo, so you don't really need to worry about replacing that. This is the only handguard in the game, so you don't need to worry about replacing that. There are no other barrel lengths, so you don't have to pay for additional barrels. You basically just switch out the compensator for a suppressor or a comp that you like, put a grip on it, replace the buttstock to whatever you want, and then throw your optic on. And that's like meta. You're really good to go at that point. So it's got a lot of mounting options for optics too, which is cool. If you want to go budget and don't want to buy anything else, you can just put an optic right on the handguard up top. You can obviously replace the iron sight with the TT and throw that on. It's got the dovetail, so you can put a dovetail adapter or a dovetail optic, or of course you can replace the dust cover with the Bastion and throw that on there. So it's crazy. It's just like basically ready to go. You throw a few attachments on there and then you've got an amazing gun. So other than attachments and modularity, let's take a look at some of the stats, which I think make it, you know, what it is and make it a really good gun. So like we said, it comes with a ton of ergo. A lot of the really good guns these days have like 0 ergo. This comes with a ton of ergo, and even once you get up to the meta builds, you can still retain a lot of that. The vertical recoil is high, obviously in base, but you can get this. Here's the meta one down to 44 vertical recoil. It's got a slow fire rate similar to the Mutant and a lot of the 7.62 guns, which I've talked about in other videos. In my opinion, is a good thing. When you look at the Mutant, okay, the Mutant has 650 rounds per minute. The RD-704 has 600 rounds per minute. A lot of people are going to say that that's a negative. In my opinion, it's a positive. The difference between 600 and 650 is not that much. If you actually run the math, at 600 rounds per minute divided by 60 seconds in a minute, you're shooting 10 rounds per second. The Mutant is going to be shooting 10.8 rounds per second. You've got 30 round mags most of the time. That means over the course of a 3-second full-blown mag dump, if you survive long enough to dump your whole mag, you're going to have shot 2 additional bullets out of a Mutant as opposed to out of an RD-704. But the trade-off there is controllability. Because it's slower and the gun has more time to return to center, it feels like the recoil is much less, even with the same stats and numbers. So in my opinion, that's not as big of a deal, although some people might think so. The other thing is that the muzzle velocity of the RD-704 is faster, 750 compared to 589, which means if you're trying to reach out a little bit farther with like a Voodoo or the Vortex Razor, which a lot of people like to do, it's going to be a little bit easier. It's got a little bit tighter of an MOA. All of the stats point to this being a better gun, in my opinion. The only other thing to look at, especially with the strength and endurance changes, is that the gun is a little bit heavier, which, you know, for some people, min-maxing weight to get those endurance points or something like that, I understand. But other than that, all of the stats kind of point to the RD-704 being the weapon that I would choose personally. Now, if you wanted to build a few different of these, this is kind of like a budget one that I have going on. Not that you would necessarily rock a budget RD-704, but you could if you wanted to by basically just throwing on like an MOE buttstock to get the recoil down a little bit. The AFG M-locks are great because some of the budget grips that you would get that you have to buy an adapter and then the grip more are not really going to give you much less recoil or much more ergo. So the AFG is a great all-around thing that you only have to buy the one thing. And then throw on a Thunder Beast. I know a lot of people don't think the Thunder Beast is budget, but you can barter for this at level 3 skier for 2 hats and a boss cap. The 2 hats are like less than 10,000 rubles, and then the boss cap is often 10 to 15,000 rubles. So for 30 to 35,000 rubles, you have the second best suppressor in the game. Once again, if you're going for a mad budget, there are much better guns to use, but this thing is nuts. And with a few simple attachments, you can get this down to 66 vertical recoil, which we will take a look at what the recoil feels like at 66. And then here is the meta one here. You can get down to 44 vertical recoil. It takes the Zukov stock, the PRS QDC suppressor. Of course, you can put like an RK2 or anything on there. This still has 45 ergo, even with all of these recoil focused attachments on it. And this thing is an absolute laser beam. Now, before we jump into the hideout and test these things, just kind of as a comparison, if you wanted to build some mutants, like a budget mutant, you could kind of do the same thing. Just replace the buttstock, add a grip, throw a suppressor on, you're good to go. And it's going to be similar in price for similar stats, which is totally fine. The thing is, though, if you want to go for something like the meta, this is where the RD-704 is going to pull ahead, because in order to get, once again, the RD-704 had 44 vertical recoil. In order to get down to that range, you're sacrificing half the ergonomics. You have to put a longer barrel on it. You have to purchase the RSAS handguard. You have to put the better buffer tube on it. You have to find or buy a PRS Gen 3 buttstock. You have to buy a better pistol grip. In order to get to those similar numbers when it comes to stats, you have to purchase a bunch of additional things for the gun, and this puts the mutant at around like 80 to 150,000 depending on what flea market prices are, more expensive for the meta build than the RD-704. Once again, you're getting maybe a little bit lighter of a gun, maybe a slightly faster firing gun, but you're sacrificing ergo. I like shorter guns. This is a long gun, and it costs a lot more money. But what I want to do is run a few experiments in the hideout to kind of show you. We've got the budget gun, just a few attachments, 66 vertical recoil. We've got the meta RD-704. And then what I want to do is throw the US rounds. I've seen other people do this. I've made videos on it in the past. The US rounds here are kind of like the 3rd or 4th best round. I know PS just got buffed, so PS is in a really good spot. However, with 29 pen, 56 damage, it's still really early in the wipe. You're not going to find too many people rocking crazy good gear. This thing reduces the recoil of the gun by 30. All of the testing that a bunch of creators have done kind of, we think that that means just flat on the vertical recoil. So if that's true, this would go from 44 to 14 vertical recoil. So we'll do a mag of each. I just want to throw some US in so we can kind of see what those feel like. But we can take these into the hideout and kind of show you what they feel like. All right, so we've got the budget build here, 66 vertical recoil roughly. Throw it on full auto. I'm going to aim right at the bottom of the target here, and then I'm not going to compensate at all for recoil. I'm just going to let it go, and you can kind of see how this just floats around naturally. So pretty shaky. It climbed quite a bit and kind of went all over the place horizontally. Now, once again, if you were trying to like compensate for that, if you were to crouch, which is one of the best things you can do to control some recoil, you could get that much better. I mean, that was me barely trying to compensate for the recoil and just making sure I was crouched. Once again, very effective on a budget. Now, the meta one will do the same thing. I'm not going to compensate for recoil at all. Much less horizontal spray. We went up all the way up to the head, but then leveled out at the torso. So you wouldn't have to aim as low. You could aim kind of center. You might send a few over the head. And with any sort of like work on compensating for the recoil at all, obviously you could do, this thing could be an actual laser beam. Once again, barely having to do anything to compensate. You just hit a crouch and you're in a really good spot. Now, if we wanted to see the difference between the BP and the US rounds, this is the meta one right here. This is the BP mag. So we'll just shoot off the BP mag and then immediately show you the difference between the US. Not compensating for recoil at all on my mouse. That's BP. We just take a step to the right, go to the US. Check the mag here, make sure I'm on the US ammo. Not compensating for recoil at all. We'll start at the same spot. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Look at the difference. That's with the meta one. We can do a similar thing with the budget one here. This is the mag of BP. And then this is where you can kind of see if you did want to go something on a budget, if you didn't plan on going up against any Chads, here's the US rounds on the kind of like budget RD-704, not compensating for recoil at all. So just by switching the ammo, that basically turns that into a little bit better version of the meta one. So great showcase of the US ammo if you wanted to use that. So that's definitely an alternative if you don't have BP, if you can't purchase BP or you can't craft it yet, or you just don't have a big stockpile of it. That is an alternative to the PS if you're rocking full auto, if you're a mag dump Andy like me. So that is the RD-704. Like we said, I definitely think this is going to be one of the meta guns. It's a little bit cheaper. You can purchase them on the flea market for really cheap if you get lucky. I like shorter guns. You don't have to worry about replacing so many parts as compared to something like a Mutant. It's got better MOA, better muzzle velocity, better ergo, really good recoil stats. While some people think the fire rate is a con, I think it's kind of a pro because it keeps the gun really controllable. It's just kind of got everything you need. Additionally, another little thing that I found out when researching the video is that the RD-704 actually takes the 50 round mags as well. Previously, it was the AKMs or the AK-103s that took that. The Mutant can't take the 50s. The RD-704 can take the 50s as well. So it's kind of everything that you need. But let me know in the comments what you think. Are you going to be using the RD-704? Is it too expensive? Are you frustrated that they just keep adding more guns that are shooting 7.62 BP? I want to hear your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. If you like this video and you want more videos like this on more of the new guns in Escape from Tarkov, think about hitting that like button, commenting down below, or subscribing to the channel. I stream Escape from Tarkov 6 days a week on Twitch. All my links will be down below. I'd love to have you stop by and say hey. And if you're looking for people to play Tarkov with, our Discord server is an awesome place to be. Please check that out as well. Thank you again for stopping by, and I will definitely see y'all on the next one.